the best transport I ever had in Canada, when the boss said, I want you to come over for a meeting. My headquarters was in Yellowknife, up in the central of Northwest Territories. He said, I'm sending over the Learjet to pick you up. I couldn't believe it. It was amazing. How many have flown in a Learjet? Aren't they amazing? I said it's like flying in a biro. Unbelievable, so fast. But then again, down on the ground you get a little slower transport. This is just that's how we get around it. Yeah, so that was fun. This is the big twatters that came in and out.
Obviously got wheels and not kickers.
But we would land on the sea ice, and in the winter they'd send a bulldozer out on the sea and make an airstrip. And the bulldozer out, just ploughing on.
How thick the ice is?
Yeah, well, you need at least 7 feet of ice. And this is the ground transportation. The Bombardier was very popular. They were the winter workhorses.
How far would you go with that?
Oh, you could go 50 k's out around the tundra. And here's the one and only way into the town is by train and or plane. So the train was started, I think, in 1927. They put a railway up to Churchill from Manitoba, mainly to take the grain from the prairies to the port of Churchill to be shipped across to Norway and to Newcastle in England. So the train was a good trip. I did it a couple of times, very slow, takes a long time, stops at every little siding, but they had good services. And that's one of the world famous trains now, like the one across Russia, and the Nullarbor and people like that. So it's a tourist train now. And this is a winter scene out the front of our house. That's the car that they gave me to drive around. And I think, I'll talk about that every car had to be plugged in when you stopped the motor. You plugged it into the 110 volts in the house. This is a family on an outing. Yeah, so you had a little cord that ran out of the house and plugged into the front of the car, and that heated an electric blanket over the battery to keep that warm. It had a little fan blowing inside the cabin so the upholstery didn't crack. If you sat on a frozen bit of upholstery, you'd crack the seat. It had a coil burning inside the motor in the sump to keep the oil warm. That was not to freeze up. So you couldn't start your car basically if you didn't have it plugged in overnight, especially if it's out in the open like many of them were. That one back that I showed you earlier was before I got a garage. I used to park it out in the street. And this is when we used to hear the bears on the roof. This is how they got there. And this little spot here is the dog kennel. He lived inside then after that. Because the polar bears, and I was talking to someone at the coffee break about the size of these bears. They are huge. They'd stand up above that cupboard over there. They'd put their hands up on top and get that box. They're so big and so heavy and so powerful that we saw the museum had captured beluga whale, put it in a great big tank about the size of these 2 tables, filled it with water, and they were going to airlift that down to a museum in southern Canada. And a bear came along and he spotted the beluga and he put his claw right through the aluminium wall, drained the thing, and then grabbed the whale under his arm and walked up the beach. They are huge animals, so you don't want to mess with them. I told you before that they fly them south. Well, here's one that's he's been injected with a gun tranquiliser. And here's the wildlife man spraying a number on his back, so he's painted with a number. That's number 4 or 5. And then they pick them up, and when they try to trap them, they know who's where. So then they're identified from a helicopter.
Why do they want to get on the roof?
They're looking for anything. They're looking for us, or they're looking for one lady. The lady had her window broken. That was because she had spaghetti on the stove and it was cooking. The smell of food. They're hungry. They're waiting to get out on the ice to hunt seals. And here's a nice little village to explore.
Will there be water up there?
No. They always went to a high point to look out and to smell. So where do I go from here? They go up on the nearest high point. Well, in the village, they go up onto a roof. Where shall I go now? You know.
Well, if he could open the tank up to get the whale,
Yeah.
couldn't he on the roof?
No, with the timber, it might be a bit harder. But the thin aluminium was breakable by their claws. They had huge claws, and they're very dangerous. Now, syllabics. This is some of their local writing. Now, the Inuit people never had a written language ever until the Catholic missionaries were up there, and they started to teach them syllabics, and they taught them this language and how to write it down. And I can't read it, but they learned that at their school there. These fellas in the picture here are building little nookshuks, which are those little stone statues. You saw one earlier, the man in stone. They build these stone statues, and they had a competition. It's sort of like their sport. See who can build the nicest stone nookshook. Let's move along. That's their language in writing. There's the church. It made early inroads into the Arctic. They also had a hospital in Chesterfield Inlet. They had a hospital there, a nursing station where people could go. One of the problems with TB, the TB was rampant amongst the Inuit many years ago, and to isolate them and put them in sanitariums, they had to be flown down to Winnipeg in Manitoba, and they stayed there for years sometimes. It was really sad. They were really separated from their culture completely. I managed to get a few of them to at least come back and visit their families and their communities, but they weren't accepted by their own people when they got back there, so back to the sanitarium to finish their lives. Here's the Inukshuk that I was talking about. This is what those fellows were competing with. They had to do a miniature one of these Inukshuk there. Now you see the graves behind that with crosses on them. That's because they can't dig a grave through the permafrost. So to keep the bears away from their dead bodies, they used to pile rocks over the coffin and just leave them on the top of the ground.
And wait until summer before they could do that.
No, they didn't wait. They just left them there permanently. They didn't go out and dig a grave when the summer was here. The permafrost is permanent, and it doesn't thaw out below the ground. You go down a foot or two, still frozen.
Do they ever deteriorate?
I suppose they do. I mean, you and I would, but they are frozen. They're frozen. But in the summertime, the temperature goes up to 90. I went swimming, so they deteriorate then in the summer.
Even though they're over the permafrost.
Yeah, no, they certainly thaw out in the summer. Now, I tried a bit of building Inuit style, but I couldn't get the curve, so I just did walls. Just put it up for Christmas decoration out the front of the house. I couldn't get it to go over like they do. They're amazing. Here's a shot of a young lady that was working up there, and she went out shooting seals. I told you about how they eat everything. The skin's used for it. They eat the contents of the stomach. They eat the eyes, they eat the liver, eat everything. So that's what they do with their seals. This is some of their art. The industrial development people were trying to encourage them to learn new ways of earning money, so they sent people up there to show them how to make artistic works. They did a lot of beautiful big prints like this, and they'd only make, say, 20 of them, and they'd all be numbered, and then they have a famous artist that'd sell them, and that became a very important part of their economy. Doing artworks. The other thing is, you've seen around the table here some of the carvings. There's an old photo of people in their own natural clothing from fur, and they're doing some soapstone carving out there in the wilderness, doing all sorts of things. Here's a few bits of carving that I brought back. I had one taken to a foundry and they said we can make a model of that, so they moulded the seal into some silver alloy. They also, pottery, see this pot here, they started a pottery and put Eskimo figures around the side of the pot. But the women also did a lot of those lovely applique things and made wall hangings with these little figures on them, and they sold quite well. But there is also a bad time up in the Arctic, and that's when we have a storm. And this is what happens when you get a blizzard one night. And that's what it did to the power lines. It just brought the whole place to a halt. Too bad if you've got a fish tank with fish at home, because goodbye fish. Everything freezes. So I get the call 6 o'clock in the morning from the commander. He said, I want you to go to every house and get them out of there, tell them to go up to Fort Churchill, which is an American installation from the war days. And it's up by the airport, and they have big buildings and they had their own generators, so they didn't have the same problem that we had. So everybody was moved out of the community in an hour before it froze everything up. And we were moved into the barracks up at the fort where the soldiers used to be, because the soldiers would come to Fort Churchill and be stationed there in the barracks until the plane could take them over the North Pole into Europe and go to war against the Germans. So a big exciting time happened when we lost the power. Anybody who had a fish tank had to say goodbye to their fish because they couldn't take that in the barracks, apparently. We were in the barracks for 2 weeks while they renovated the power lines, and everything had to be dug up. The sewer line had to be dug up, thawed out and redone to take the crap away. It was a big operation. We've been back there a couple of times since, and the village we lived in is completely removed. It no longer exists. So it's probably everyone gets stationed where there's more reliable power. Their biggest industry at the moment is the polar bear industry, and you mentioned that. They've got this huge vehicle, the Tundra, I forget what they call it, the Polar Bear Express or something. It's about as big as this room, and it has wheels on it that are about 8 feet across, great big wheels, which obviously got ripped up by the bear. So that's their biggest industry. Also, the fact that it's the polar bear capital of the world. So at a certain time of the year when all the bears are there waiting for the sea ice to freeze, that's the time to go to Churchill, if you're interested.
Take 7 beers of underpants.
What do you say?
Take several pair of underpants.
Yeah, take your underpants. Now, is there any question? I've got one more story to share with you, but I want any questions come first.
Where do you generate your power? Do you have diesel generators or what?
When did what say?
How do you generate the power there for the community?
Oh, they had big generators. If you got back up, you got generators. But I think they had a powerhouse, burning oil or whatever they do.
What age were you when you were up there?
I was 28.
Yeah, and till when?
My kids were all this age,
Yeah.
And my wife was the same age as me. No, she's older than me, but just. We did fly back to Australia once to see her father and her grandmother, and I'm glad we did because he died the next year while we were over there. That was pretty hard. And the wife was homesick, very homesick, because I would be away travelling and I'd get stuck. I could be up in Coral Harbour and I'd be stuck there for 2 weeks because of the weather. If the weather went out, the planes couldn't come in and we're stuck there. So I had a friend up there and I said, well, I need a chessboard. I couldn't find a chessboard anywhere. He said, let's make one. So we sat there with scissors and paper and we made, all these little pawns and all these bishops and all these kings and whatever. And we sat and played chess for 2 weeks, waiting for the weather to change. It was a completely different world, but it's very hard for my wife and 3 little kids. She's stuck in a house
She's looking after her kids.
looking after the kids. She made a couple of lifelong friends there. We've got some lifelong friends up there who now live south in Vancouver. So yeah, it was pretty tough on her. So when I got back one day from 2 weeks away, she said, I'm going home. Oh my God, what? You're going back to Australia? Because she lost her father, she'd missed her family, and she was just so homesick. Anyhow, I said, okay, well, looks like this holiday, this chapter is over. So I had to resign and we came back to Australia.
Have your kids ever gone back?
One of them went back there to live, the one who was born there. She said, I'm going to go and try and live in Canada. So she went and got a job in Toronto. I've got to brag a little bit. My daughters are marvellous women. They're over 50 now, but one of us is, the oldest one is an advisor to the Minister of Health in Sydney. And I thought, wow, how did that happen? Another one is a GP and an expert in black coal disease for the mines up in Moranbah, black lung disease. And the one who was born in Churchill is a lecturer in dentistry in Bendigo. So they've all done very well despite living in the Arctic. It's amazing. And here they are. Have you got a question?
Yeah, the name Churchill, where did that come from?
Oh, I think that comes after Churchill himself. No, there was a Churchill earlier, but I don't really know for sure.
I think it's probably named after the Duke of Marlborough, John Churchill, who was a ancestor of Winston Churchill or whatever.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I did see something like
He was
that.
a famous general or whatever in the War of Spanish Succession or some damn thing or whatever. Anyway.
Well, that's brought us to this last, second to last slide also. This is the Churchill River. And it has ice on it 7 feet thick. And in the winter, you can go down the boat ramp with your car and drive for miles along the Churchill River. You can't take a road anywhere else in Churchill, it's so far, but get on the Churchill River, you can go. So we did that one day. We said, let's go for a drive. So we drove down the boat ramp, took the dog, the baby's in the car. There's my oldest daughter and the second one there. And we head off down the river. And then you get to a big wide stretch in the river and you put up the speed a little bit and then you put the wheel in a lock and you go round. Oh, Daddy, this is good. More, Daddy. like going to Disneyland, or it's like going to down the Gold Coast. More, Daddy. Oh, I get there. Round again, spinning the car. And then you come to a bend in the river and the car's out of control. And it's just going at speed. And you're looking ahead of you and you can see a black hole in the ice. Uh-oh. You've got no control of that car. And you're going for this black hole with all of your kids and your wife and the dog, and you think this is it. We're 10 or 20 miles upstream, no one would have ever found us, but something happened. It was like the hand of God came down and said, stop. And we stopped suddenly, right 1 metre from the hole. And I just backed off and turned around, went off the river, never went back on the river again. I tell you,
What causes the black hole?
it's the bend in the river, turbulence underneath, swirling, wore a hole in the ice. Turbulence. So, and I, with my heart in my mouth, know that we would have died instantly, never would have got out of it. They would never have found us. It would have been a mystery like some of the other mysteries of Beaumont children and things like that, never found. And we would have gone down in the history books as what happened to that Australian family? Where's their car?
How do you navigate in a situation like that? I mean, there's a real...
How do I navigate it?
Navigate, yes.
What delineates the river from the river banks when the river's frozen over? How do you
It's all
know
licensed.
you're on the river versus...
Because it's flat and level and then suddenly it becomes raised.
So the banks are there, okay.
Banks are there. You see the raised snow.
Right.
How did your car get on? Did you have chains on it?
No, we didn't have chains on at the time. So I believe in angels. I believe that there was a divine intervention. Divine intervention. The only way I can understand that, so it's changed my life. It changed my life. So now I actually, there's a little verse, there's a promise in the Bible that says, call upon me in your time of trouble and I will deliver you. It's a promise, stand on it. And I've used that verse many times. Just this week I was down the river. And I was doing a little video down there and I put my keys on the table in one of those little pavilions down there, put my hat on top of my keys, got up and walked away and left my keys there. I didn't see them. Got home to try to unlock the door. Where's my keys? Where's my keys? There was a note on the phone, and I couldn't understand it, I thought it was a scam. There's a photo come in on the messages, because I had my phone number written on the keys. And I'll get this photo, and it's a photo of my keys on that table. I said, Pauline, quick, get in the car, we've got to go. So we raced down to the river again in the car this time. They'd been sitting there for an hour, and they were still there. There's, call upon me in your time of trouble, and I will deliver you. I tell you, that was an incredible thing. And that ice story is amazing. This is how we decorated our home there. But this is at the Inuit when they got new homes. This is how they decorated their homes. They like the things that the Westerners had on in their houses in Vancouver. So there's a story for you about their trip to the Inuit country, and here's their sunset. So that's what we're going to finish on. And ladies and gentlemen, no ladies here, thank goodness. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Where's the flag? What's the?
Oh, that's the Northwest Territories flag, and that covers all the territories that were on the map in Canada. But it's not very well secured on the wall, so it's better. There you go. Doesn't matter, I think the speech is over.
There's another question. What to do when you come back to Australia?
I became the Senior Social Planner for the South Australian Government, which was far above my weight, but anyhow they gave me this job, and for 2 years I helped South Australia. We started the first crisis care service in the world. I had a policeman, senior police officer, come to me in Adelaide, and he said, we've got a problem. He said, in the police force, when we have to take our police officers to a house where mum and dad are and tell them that their son's just been killed on the road with a motorbike accident, we don't know what to do next. Or he said, if someone's committed suicide and we're going to go and tell mum and dad that so-and-so's just hung himself in a tree, we don't know what to do next. We need help. And so over a cup of coffee, this guy, Bob Potts and myself, we said, how would it be if we had a crisis care service that you could call upon 24/7 and have the police officer concerned ring up this number and get a counsellor to come with you when you go to tell the people that their child has died or their husband's committed suicide. You're taking someone, and then the policeman tells the news and leaves the scene and goes back to work somewhere else, but leaves the counsellor with the family. And I said, that sounds like that might work well. So I wrote a 1-page, 2-paragraph proposition to the government. I walked to the Director General's office, I plunked it on his table, I said, have a look at this, what do you reckon? He said, leave it with me. He was in the Minister's office the same day. And within 3 weeks, a service had begun. They hired 24 counsellors, and they trained them, and then it was copied by interstate. It was also copied in New Zealand, it was copied in Canada, it was copied in England. So we started a brand new service in the world called Crisis Care Service.
Right.
So then I thought this is still too hard in here. I like to get out of the country, so I went up to Clare in the Clare Valley and became the welfare officer there for 10 years, and I wanted to build my own stone house, I always wanted to, so that's what we did. We bought some property and built a 2-storey stone house, and it's now a winery called Jeaneray Winery in the Clare Valley. We built that. So, yeah, wanting to wind her up?
No, I'm just interested. You've talked about seals, you've talked about walrus, you've talked about everything, but why is there a buffalo?
And muskos.
Oh, that's not a buffalo. That's a muskox. Someone got it right.
What's that?
This is a muskox. They're an Arctic animal. They drop their wool. They don't cut it off. It's dropped on the tundra, and people pick it up. Beautiful wool, very strong. They've got big horns like a buffalo, and they can charge you. Yeah, a very rare Arctic animal. I didn't actually see one in the wild, but someone carved one for me to bring it up.
Said it looks like a buffalo.
Yeah. Are you guys singers? Anyone want to sing? I know you want to say you've enjoyed it, haven't you? No, you haven't enjoyed it? I'm going to play a harmonica and you can sing if you like. Okay. So he's a jolly good fella for inviting me. Colin Hall, wherever he is, Colin Hall got me into this trouble, but it's been good for me because I've had to stretch my brain and go back there and put this PowerPoint. I didn't even know how to work PowerPoint. But,
Put your hand out.
hey?
Put your hand out so we can throw money in it.
No, I want you to sing. I love male voices. I want you to
Why is
sing.
there much money here?
See if you can sing this song. I've never done that before in my life.
On behalf of all the Grumps, Paul, thank you very much for a very entertaining and educational talk. Thank you.